There he is. David's joining us. Lakshmi, I think it's time to begin maybe, honey. Is it 7:02 yet? Okay, friends, let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru Deva, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, dear friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow before you all. Great masters, guide us, protect us, shine your loving light on our path, that we may rise above all delusion, all sense that anything but you could bring us true love. Help us to remove obstacles that are in our way and to find deep, true contentment with our path right in this moment, right in your loving arms, and knowing that everything we need to be in love and to be free is already ours. Om. Peace. Amen.
Amen.
Nothing on earth can hold me. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Nothing on earth can hold me. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Nothing to fear anymore. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Nothing to fear anymore. Nothing on earth can hold me. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Nothing on earth can hold me. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Nothing to fear anymore. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Nothing to fear anymore.
peace. Amen. We'll have some music now.
This song is called Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto by Swami Kriyananda. When the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone. Tell me, little sisters, what have you to say? Live your life as perfectly as this perfect day. When the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone. Tell me, little sisters, what have you to say? Live your life as perfectly as this perfect day. When the cherries bloom, Kyoto sings all day long, rising melodies to the sun. Blossoms awake to the gladness of song. See them smile and greet everyone. See them smile and greet everyone.
We good? Great. Just looking around to see who's here with us tonight. There's somebody with a shawl. I can't see who I'm looking at. And I'm thinking, where in the world is it cold tonight? Oh, this is one of those evenings, and I'll have to look at the words later and sit and meditate with it. I'm not quite sure I know what this music had to do with our topic, but there's clearly at least something about the energy of it that Swamiji felt or knew. So I'll go deep with it later, but many of you know this song. So if any of you have any ideas about what, I don't know what's the title of this song, Lakshmi? Cherry Blossoms in Kyoto. You read those words, and if you have any idea what this has to do with greed, I want you to write to me and tell me. You can listen to the song too. I'm just getting ready here because I want to read the secret for tonight. I forget what number we're on, but we're somewhere near 20. So we keep moving along. Tonight is, we're on the topic of greed. And Swamiji says, the secret of overcoming greed is contentment, harmonious feelings in the heart. Affirm mentally, he says, I am complete in myself. I am whole. I am free from all anxiety and need. Contentedly, I accept whatever comes, at the same time doing my best to achieve my valid goals. I'll read it one more time. The secret of overcoming greed is contentment, harmonious feelings in the heart. Affirm mentally, I am complete in myself. I am whole. I am free from all anxiety and need. Contentedly, I accept whatever comes, at the same time doing my best to achieve my valid goals. It's interesting, when I saw what the topic was for tonight, I had that feeling that I've only had once before. I just read greed, and I don't know, there's something about the word even, but I just felt, this was a couple of days ago, oh, I don't want to talk about greed. But actually it's as has been true week after week after week, a very beautiful topic when you look at what it means to overcome greed, or to get a clearer sense of how do we go down that path of greed? What does that say about where we are emotionally? And what is or are, I should say, the spiritual antidotes? How do we get ourselves out of it? It's actually very profound. I think in the most simple way, we could just say that most of the times, greed comes from a sense of insecurity, a feeling of lack. And we tend to want to make up for it by getting greedy, whatever way that is. Sometimes it can be wanting more money, wanting more stability in any number of ways, wanting more attention from people, even sometimes the way many of us, and I'm saying us, including me, overeat, the way we can be very greedy with food. And interestingly, though I'm not going to talk about that at all tonight, but Yogananda does. He writes a lot about greediness as it relates to food. And I think some of that has to do with the fact, although I didn't carefully study all of what he said about it, but it has very much to do with the fact that we try and satisfy on the physical plane that which we feel we are lacking, first emotionally and then spiritually. So we're often feeding ourselves to take care of something that can really never be taken care of by food. So many people act greedily around food, means that they take in more food than they need. And I know that's probably how the term comfort food came. What are those foods that give us a real feeling of home, connectedness, again, on the material plane, with like mother or grandma's cooking, or those foods that just remind you of home and therefore of love. But again, we very often find ourselves overusing them rather than looking inward to see how else could we find that contentment. So greed is just that experience of feeling really insecure in some ways and wanting to satisfy it. And of course, we can be greedy in many ways, greedy with power. Money, of course, is power. And how often do all of us, really it's all of us, but in its grosser form, we can watch other people who want much more of something than they need. And there's a big difference between what we need and a desire. If we have just as much food as we need, that's not being greedy, though we can take that food with a greedy attitude. So I'll talk about Patanjali in a moment, but as Patanjali teaches us, he's never just speaking about a lesson in its literal form, but let me come back to that. Very early on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins to explain that people, all of us, really would love to find a way to hold on to our good habits and our bad habits. We want to be good. Mostly everybody wants to be good, though there's a broad range of definition of that, of course, and it depends on where we stand on this path back to the divine. So what's good for one person would be a fall for another. So it's all directional, and we know that. But typically people are doing the best they can do to attain their goal of happiness. So people do things that look crazy to us because they think it's going to make them happy. But then, of course, I always think I'm doing things that might look pretty crazy to other people because I think it's what's going to make me happy. So I feel no judgment about it. It's just simply the truth. The spiritual path is a continuum, and depending on where we are, up can look very different. Up or expansive can look different. But the point here is that people, once we've attained a human life, often think that they can be both good and bad. It's really that old image of having one foot in two boats. And we, of course, know that eventually those boats are going to separate or get us off balance, and we're going to wind up in the water. And very much in his own way, which is much more eloquent than what I just said about the boats, Krishna begins to teach how and why that's impossible. Now, in the third chapter of the Gita, and we all know this, and I'm not going to speak about it, but by then he's really come to the battle of Kurukshetra, and he's actually speaking about what it means to go to battle, to be willing to be at war with those negative, contractive qualities that we all have. And I'm speaking about it tonight because greed is definitely one of them. And I think if we look carefully enough, we would all see that we're greedy in certain ways at certain times. But that's in the third chapter. He's not there yet. And he's teaching Arjuna that people are afraid to let go of their contractive qualities, which he very quickly points out are satanic, usually. If we go towards those qualities, if we're greedy, if we're jealous, if we're demanding, if we're judgmental, that's a Satan pulling on us. So all of life is this question, right? We know this. Are we going to go towards Satan, or are we going to go towards God? That's the entire story of the spiritual path. But what Krishna is telling Arjuna early on is that if we begin to practice letting go of these qualities that are holding us back from attaining our highest spiritual goals, we're never really giving up anything. That all of the energy that has gone into behaving, acting out, being attached to those negative, I'm just going to call them negative qualities, and we all know what they are. Again, we're talking about greed, so greed's one that's in every sentence everywhere where we're talking about contractive or downward pulling or negative in these spiritual teachings. So this is, let's just hold it tonight that it's about greed. And Krishna is saying to him, you never were those qualities. You never really even had those qualities. It's energy that's all a part of you that's being directed in a certain way. And rather than thinking that you're letting go of something, that part of you has to disappear, he says, and we know this, but it's beautiful hearing it again in relation to overcoming this quality. He says it's much better to think of it as transforming, as taking that energy that once was, in this case, greed, and knowing nothing in you is disappearing, but that you can always take that energy and transform it into a higher quality. So it would be very easy right now to say, instead of being greedy, we could turn that into generosity. Instead of being greedy, we could turn it into compassion. I mean, we could just go on and on if we think about what might be the opposite, or as Swamiji says in the reading, contentment that we can practice. And he offers us an affirmation here that is not one of the affirmations from the book, but he says, affirm mentally, I am complete in myself. So you're taking that energy that was a lack of contentment, a greediness, a desire for more than what you need, hoping that it's going to fill a hole. And that's what greediness always is. And you say this instead, I am complete in myself. I am whole. I am free from all anxiety and need. Anyway, and the affirmation goes on. We read it twice before, but it is, and it's in your secrets books, but it's a beautiful affirmation. So in other words, that energy that was greed based on fear, Krishna is saying, you're not giving anything up. You're simply taking that energy and allowing it, supporting it, affirming it until it becomes something else. So, and he says, make no mistake about it, you cannot hold on to being greedy and like this and being content and expansive like this all at the same time. Of course, some of those qualities exist at the same time in each of us. But remember, what Krishna is teaching Arjuna is about the path to spiritual perfection. So he's not saying, well, you could go from the basement to the first floor, it's fine. Go on and be greedy. That's not what the Gita is about. And that's not what this class is about, or Swamiji's secrets. We're asking ourselves, how do we become pure, uplifted, enlightened spiritual beings? That's our goal. And it doesn't matter, again, where we are. We want to always be imagining ourselves as our highest potential. That, of course, is what an affirmation is. That's why so often when Swamiji's talking about dealing with these different emotions, he offers us an affirmation, or we can find an affirmation for it in his book, Affirmations for Self-Healing, because those affirmations are statements of our highest potential. Of course, most of us aren't living that way for any of those 52 affirmations, or this one, which makes 53. If we were perfect in all of these, we wouldn't need to be here anymore, but we're not. So we just keep affirming that. And that's what Krishna is saying to Arjuna. If you want to be free in your divine self, you cannot hold on here and expect to soar here. It won't happen. So very early on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna introduces this and shows us not only that we need to let go of these qualities, but that what letting go really means is a transformation of energy, which is what the whole spiritual path is. So he introduces these concepts and basic concepts that are going to take us all the way to enlightenment. and he introduces them very, very early. Now, interestingly, and I'm sure all of you or many of you who are with us in this class have had some exposure at least to the yamas and niyamas. And we know that Patanjali's yamas, there's 5 yamas, which are the don'ts. They're the way we have to control ourselves. And they're proscriptive. They say, if you do this, if you let go of these qualities, violence, lying, anyway, whatever all 5 of them are. Non-greed happens to be the 5th yama, which is very interesting. This is, I say it's interesting because I want to say that's how important it is on our spiritual path. Remember what Patanjali said? He said, it doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what path you're taking. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to go from where you are to that realization that you are one with God. Every soul will need to go through everything on this 8-fold path. And the first limb of the 8-fold path are the yamas and niyamas. So here we have non-greed, which means, of course, don't be greedy. And he goes on to talk about what happens if you're not greedy. But he's saying every soul will have to go through this. It's very important. It's not that the other emotions that we've been talking about aren't important. Fearfulness, dull-mindedness, anxiety. I always forget what all of them are, but we've covered quite a few of them. They're all meaningful because each time we meet, I've been speaking about knowingly that every one of us has moments of all of them. That's, and maybe I shouldn't say that. What just came through my mind is, and I've told you all this story, but the night I went out for dinner with Swami Kriyananda, and I know I've told this story and probably in this class, but it's worth repeating. When we walked into the restaurant, there were a whole group of us. We were celebrating an event that we had just put on, and I was at this dinner only because I was one of the people who, not only, but I was there because I was one of the people who had had a lot to do with making this event happen, which was probably either a book launch or something in and around Swamiji. Anyway, we go to this restaurant, and as we're walking in, Swamiji just says in the room, I want Shanti to sit right across from me. We were at this big oblong table, a whole group of people. And, you know, those moments were always a little strange. They just came like that. And it's sort of like, what? I mean, I wouldn't even have thought he was noticing me. And then he says he wants me right across from him. So I was across just a little table, like our water glasses were touching. And at one point, I mean, the whole evening was wonderful for many reasons. But at one point, Swamiji looked at me and he said to me, I can't remember if it was apropos of something or nothing, but he said to me, you know, I've never been nervous in my life. And it really, I mean, he must have seen the surprise on my face. I couldn't fathom that. It simply was humanly impossible for me to imagine never being nervous in your life. And he said, let me think about that for a minute. He stopped and he just went inside and he said, yeah, that's true. I've never been nervous. What an amazing statement to make. Now, where that came from was because I was saying we've all at some point or another felt, if even for a moment, some bit of every emotion that we've covered. Then I thought, well, maybe not. Maybe some of you are like Swamiji and there are some of these emotions that you've just never, ever felt. But none of them, until now, none of them have been in Patanjali's Eightfold Path. That's the first thing that jumped out at me when I saw this greed. I thought, wow, that's one of the yamas. This is one of the things that one of the aspects of our being that we all need to overcome isn't the right word, but I'll use the word transform again. Bring that energy up. Notice it consciously, thoughtfully, actively, transform it into something else, because Patanjali tells us, this great teacher who, was clearly an avatar, and everything he said was truth. And he said, every soul on their way to God will need to go through every aspect of this Eightfold Path. So that is another just fascinating piece of this and how important it is. And then I wanted to just mention that greed, now this is true of many things, but greed, we find a lot of karma being relived. There are just so many stories about it, but greed is something, it's one of those qualities. Now there are many qualities, not just the few that Patanjali mentioned, but many, where as long as we don't, there's another word I want to use, but other than transcend. Until we transcend it, it will keep coming back. And here we are living life, and we're wondering, why does everything I do in business go bad? I met a woman in this past week who was coming to me for some counseling, very interesting lady, really fascinating for many reasons. And I was just meeting her. But at one point she was saying to me, I look at myself, I'm a nice person. I mean to do good. I'm not beautiful, but I'm not ugly. I'm not I don't stand out in any horribly negative way. And yet people have never liked me. They've never liked me. I was always the kid who was left off of sports teams, and she just went on and on. And very interestingly, when she met me, she said to me, I don't really want to be here. I'm sent here by a friend who insists I come or she'll quit supporting me, basically. And don't think I want to have anything to do with your spirituality or religion. So I said, okay. I mean, it was just sort of sure, come on in and talk. Of course, knowing that probably that wasn't all going to be true. And in fact, we had a very beautiful first visit together. And she's a deeply spiritual person, deeply spiritual. It's just not what she calls it, but it was just so evident. But the reason I'm saying it, I couldn't say to her, oh, karma, and talk to her in that way. Impossible, because she had already tied my hands. I want nothing to do with you and your spirituality, she said. So I have to admit, it was a little bit of a wonderful challenge. But anyway, yeah. So at some point, I'm going to find the way to say to her, you don't need to keep living this. You don't need to keep being the person who's never wanted. You are actually in this life delightful. You're smart, you're funny, you're courageous, all the things I saw about her instantly. But she has this karma that I could see it right away. It's this is nothing from this life, but it's it's like if a piece of adhesive tape gets stuck to your shoe and you keep walking and you want to get it off, but you can't, you stop, you try and get it off with the other foot. I'm sure you've all had that experience. It's stuck on your shoe and you have to stop and consciously get it off of there. And it's just what I felt about her. These things that come in that are in deep karmic grooves, they come back to us. So we look at our lives, you know, why can't I make money? Why don't people like me? Why did I grow up as a child without enough food on my plate? I mean, it can just go on, and it's often not obvious, because that way that greed can present itself, like, as I said at the beginning, always wanting more attention, always wanting everybody to like you to the point of being where you're behaving for that. You're greedy for it. You sort of get up and do little dances to try and get people to notice you and like you. Well, that comes back. And then here you are in a lifetime where people don't seem to like you. And it couldn't make any sense in this life. So greed is one of those deep-seated qualities that we can bring back life after life until we stop and we begin to do these practices that say, I am content. I am happy with what I have. And furthermore, God's giving me everything I need. The willingness and ability to begin to let go of greed, because remember, we can't do this moment by moment by moment in life. There are too many, there's too much of Satan around, is really what it is. Too many ways that we're pulled down and out. We can't, so we have to just keep drawing our energy back up to the point between the eyebrows, or we need to keep serving people with our hearts wide open, not to attain a specific goal in life that's about this behavior, that behavior, this behavior, but to attain the big goal of realizing the divine within. So seva, meditation, focusing our attention and energy here, which we can only do through meditation, are exactly how we begin to let go of this quality of greediness. And in doing that, in following each breath up our spine, in looking into our third eye, in turning around sometimes and looking up at the spiritual eye and focusing all of our awareness on it with a deep conscious desire to move into it and through it, we begin to become aware, little by little by little, that God is always with us, that we cannot possibly want for anything, even if we've suffered in this life. I mean, I'm saying it because, of course, some of us have suffered. I myself was one of those people. When I said I didn't have enough food on the table when I was growing up, I meant it. I was raised in a very poor family, and very often there was not enough food. And because there wasn't enough food or money, very often my mother was just a bear. I mean, she was suffering. She had 4 kids. She was alone. It was complicated. I certainly don't blame her, but what I'm saying is, even through moments like that, or through a lifetime like that, now that was nothing compared to all of the atrocities that can happen to people, but it was my version of it, and it's hard when you're a little girl to live through that. But whatever it is, the answer's always the same. It doesn't matter how horrible it is. If you can stop and focus and remember that God has you, He's with you, He is you. And as soon as we can remember that, we are freed from whatever circumstance it is. And we don't have to feel that we want more than we need. We don't have to have that experience of being attached to things in the whole material world as if they're going to fill that longing in our heart. They will not. They won't, under any circumstance. And I'm trying to think of why marriage is just coming to my mind right this minute. Oh, yeah. I know why, but and of course, it's one of those stories, but recently talking to a couple about a wedding, having a wedding. Everybody wants, not everybody, but many people want to have a wedding. And the weddings are lovely. They're fabulous. They're fun. It's an affirmation of this vow of love, of commitment. But if we go into that wedding thinking of that union, that coming together for even a moment, that is going to make us whole, then we just argue and fight and we feel disappointed and we get jealous and we get competitive and we don't quite know why, because we never come back to the fact that the only way that that relationship can genuinely work is when we already feel whole in ourselves. Nobody else can make us whole. We are whole. We're whole in God. And all of the not knowing, these are just examples. People don't like me. I don't have enough food on the table. I got married, now I'm miserable. Or why does she just want to keep living with me and she won't marry me? You know, on and on and on. Whatever all of those stories are, that desire to fix our needs from the outside in are simply a forgetting that we're already whole, that God is in us, that God is giving us everything we need. You know, I've said many times over and over that I've had this obsession. My obsession, by the way, has grown and expanded for, I don't know, dozens of years. All I would read about was the Holocaust. And of course, I was born and raised Jewish, and I'm sure, and it had a lot to do with it. And as I've said, I'm pretty sure that I died in the Holocaust in my last life. But then I started wanting to read about the South in the era, say in the era of slavery. I'm not sure I want to say that so past tense, but in the 17 and 1800s, to read about that. And many other topics now that I read about, really well-written books, but where it took such, not just courage, it did take courage, but courage combined with wisdom and with knowing God. And those are the people that made it through there. Those consistently are the souls that not just lived through it, many people lived through all of that, but lived through it and could come out the other side and be able to find and experience joy. And many of them knew joy, knew true joy, even while they were in the camps or while they were slaves or whatever the situation was. They never lost their joy. This is something that many American Indians lived with, even during all of those horrible years. These are the people who stayed so deeply attuned to the divine that they knew that they were whole. Nothing about them was greedy, not in any way. It's not even like they were attached to something that wasn't theirs, which is the third yama, non-covetousness. They weren't even attached to what was rightfully theirs, not even their own bodies, not even every moment of their whole life, no attachment. And when they let go of all those attachments, even in the most unimaginably horrible conditions, they felt whole. They knew they were whole. They either lived or died with God. That's what non-greed means. That's what letting go of greediness means. There's no way to transcend that feeling of greed, of want, of need, of insecurity, until we realize that none of that is who we are. It's impossible. We are made in the image of God. We have everything we need right now. There's nothing to want or to be attached to. And it's not that you can't want something. You can say, gee, I'd love to have some ice cream when I go home tonight. That's fine. But you can't need to have that ice cream, and you can't feel like get home and eat the whole pint of ice cream, because nobody needs a pint of ice cream. We're feeding something else. So I'm going to end now. It's just, there's so many examples, and like every one of these topics, I find myself with more to say than I have time for. But I think really we're able to hear tonight the essence of this emotion of greed and the path and the way out. So now let me ask you, we still have at least 5, maybe even 10 minutes. I've turned away from you, I know, but I'm looking at you actually. Anybody have any comments or questions or? I always wait because, Letty, Letty, I'm not laughing at you. You know that. I love you. I love that if I sit here long, really, it's nobody else asks, you always will. Beautiful.
I wanted to say thank you for
Letty, hold on for 1 minute, honey. 1 second. Lakshmi, you're going to either have to yell it out afterwards, or you won't hear it if you come up here, I don't think. I can't hear her. Oh, Lakshmi's coming to fix it. She's hoping to. She will. I can't hear you is the problem. You're on a soundboard in the back. And yeah, you can listen to her question. Or, can you hear her? Letty, ask your question, honey, then Lakshmi will tell me.
Oh, okay. It's actually a more of a comment that I appreciate the way you explained greediness, because like jealousy and my eating habits, just all of that, I wouldn't have considered it being greedy, and it being one of the yamas, and it puts more of an importance on it to transform that energy. So thank you.
She's saying she appreciates the way that you've redefined greediness in terms of jealousy or overeating or these things that puts more of an emphasis on what we can do, the way that we can actually.
Yeah, I'm glad that's very important, Letty. And when you actually mention some specific feelings like jealousy or behaviors, overeating, I mean, we all could, but it makes it more real for us. And then we realize that does fall in the category of greed. It gives us a way to work on it. I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad you heard that, is what it is. Yeah.
We have another question.
Another question, so give me a minute.
Where does jealousy arise from, and what is the opposite quality of it?
Who asked that question?
Gurdeep.
Where does jealousy, the question is, maybe you can all read it there. Where does jealousy arise from, and what is the opposite? Yeah, jealousy arises from a deep, deep sense of insecurity. I mean, always. Where there's something that we feel, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, when we're jealous of somebody, we actually believe that they have something we don't. And of course, there are many situations in life where it's more common than others, but it's a very common feeling. And it definitely comes from that sense that somebody else has something that we don't have, and we think we should have it. If it's theirs, we think it should be ours, whether it's a material object. So very often, people are competitive and jealous of each other's homes, of their money, of relationships that they have. Very common, really more than ever anywhere in the world, for women to be jealous of and with each other. It's just a common female trait. It comes up very easily and it manifests in the world in many ways, but it always comes back to feeling, again, this is unconscious, but a lack in ourselves, a feeling of something lacking in ourselves, and somebody else has that thing which we're sure would make us happier, more contented, complete if we could just get it, no matter what the it is, a quality, a material object, a person, somebody's attention. We begin to think that if that, there was that interesting reading from the Bhagavad Gita a couple weeks ago. I'm never going to be, and I read it again last week, but from desire comes attachment, from attachment breeds anger. I think jealousy was even in there. So Krishna just lays it out. It's perfect if you look back at that Gita reading, because jealousy's in there. Very, very painful feeling to have. The opposite, not the opposite, but what's the word I want? The way to neutralize that, the thing that will neutralize it is, of course, contentment. It's exactly what we're talking about tonight. And that's very difficult for people. How many times have we said to somebody, why would you be jealous of that? Look what you have. Or why would you even want that? You have so many beautiful qualities in yourself. But when people feel jealous and insecure, they cannot hear that. So contentment is a practice. Contentment is the realization and appreciation of what we already have. And it takes a knowing that that is our karma. That's exactly perfect for us. And it's unfortunately very challenging for all of us at some point or another, sometime or another, to get to it. But that's the goal. That's where we're going, is to help ourselves, and if it's somebody that we love, to help them find their way to a sense of contentment, of ease within. Affirmations help. Really, depending on the person, the state, all of that. This is why I've always, for years, though I've been deeply involved on this spiritual path, which of course all of you know, but so often, even at the church here, I mean, even seeing people here in the congregation, there are just times where I suggest that they have a little bit of time with some psychotherapy, because sometimes we have to loosen up the hold that some of those feelings have on us. And jealousy is something that just kills us. It kills our spirit. So it's important to work with that. And sometimes we might have to work with a counselor or a therapist for a little bit. Then people can open up, and then I find they can feel more spiritual qualities flowing. I hope that answers your question.
I have a question. How do you differentiate jealousy from envy? I always I feel that both are the same, but there must be a distinction. And does it also, envy also come from insecurity?
She's asking, is there a difference between jealousy and envy? And does envy also stem from insecurity?
I don't think there's much of a difference, Bonnie. I think
Okay.
they're really, envy has a nicer sound to it, doesn't it? I was
I know,
listening.
that's why, I mean,
I thought that too.
Yeah, it's really true. The words, the V sound is nice. Jealousy is a harder word. But I think really they're the same. Maybe there's a little bit of difference of degree, but not much. Mostly it's they're very similar, and the solutions are the same. And we're speaking about these solutions. I'm just saying the words. This is the hard stuff in life, and the more clear we become that
We lost your sound, Shanti.
We lost you. We can't hear it.
Can you hear me now? Now you can hear me. We have this eternal frustration going on with our sound equipment, but we did speak today about getting all new sound equipment, new soundboard, everything. So we all have a lot to look forward to. So, yeah, envy and jealousy. But what I was saying, I think, was that these are extremely, extremely challenging qualities to let go of. And particularly as we get to that place where we're letting go of the last inklings of them, which I always feel all of us are who are involved here. As you've all heard me say, we are the 1 in 1,000 that Krishna talks about. We're here, we're seeking, we're the 1 in 1,000 who wants to know God. So we're highly evolved souls in that way. And the challenges are great, but we're also very close to the top of the mountain. So we mustn't quit. We cannot give in here. But yeah, jealousy, envy, the same. I'm sure I was on my way to saying something else, but okay. What we need to do is have an hour of talking and then an hour of discussion. Maybe we'll build that in the next time around. But okay, everybody, are we good to end? Everybody okay? Sorry, we went a little over tonight, but they were good questions and a good talk. So we'll see you it's 2 weeks spiritual renewal week. Oh, may I say a few things? 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be in spiritual renewal week. There will be no class. We'll send a notice about that, okay? Because that Friday is Kriya. I'm trying to look. I don't know if everybody here is a Kriya Bond, but that Friday at 4 o'clock, please consider signing up to renew your Kriya online through the village. We've all been amazed at how powerful these online Kriya initiations have been. Tomorrow morning, for anybody who can and is interested, we have a beautiful retreat going on here on the Divine Mother. Myself, Lakshmi, Sai Ganesh, Keshava, and Bhajana will be providing the music. So yeah, big doses of Divine Mother here tomorrow morning. Yeah, Lakshmi's saying you can come for free to the retreat if you just email her. Send her an email if you want, and she'll send you a link. And it starts at 9. Oh, you can come in person. That's right. I keep forgetting. We're in a new age now again. If you want to just show up, do we start at 9? Temple at 9 o'clock. Yeah, please feel free to join us. Yeah, I think that's all. Lots going on everywhere. Kirtan tomorrow night and pizza night out on the green at the community. So lots and lots of good ways for satsang. All right, everyone, God bless you all.